Exciting news, so I've signed up for a track day to take the 1198 out on the open road to see what it can do and what I can do. Now I've got about a week before the track day itself, so I'm going to spend that time prepping the bike and prepping myself so I'm ready to go when I get there. That's what we're going to be doing in this video. So this is the bike in street spec. I haven't touched it at all. There's quite a few things that still need to be done in order to be configured to do a track day. In fact, let's see it here. And there we are. This is what it looks like when it's fully spec'd out for a track day. So you can see the obvious things are the mirrors are no longer there and the lights are taped up. So something additionally I did there is that I disconnected the front bulbs so that you don't have that additional heat heating up this tape and possibly get it all gooey when you go to remove it. So the reason for taping up your lights are kind of two or threefold. One is to reduce glare and reflections. The other is to prevent rocks from hitting there and shattering the glass. And three, preventing shattered plastic and glass from getting all over the track. Did that in the front for the headlights and the rear for the tail lights, turn signals, and reflectors. Pretty simple thing, just use some blue painter's tape. And then I removed the mirrors. I did have to buy some mirror block off plates because the mirrors act as the top securing piece for the upper part of the cowl here. So if you didn't have these, it'd be kind of flopping around. I learned that mistake when I had my 996 taking it to the track day. So I've got some of these. They're more expensive than you'd think at about 50 bucks, but it's definitely worth it. Moving back to the back of the bike again, I did remove the license plate. Moving on to the side stand, you want to make sure that it snaps up into place like this. While we're down here, you want to check your chain, make sure it has the correct slack in it and is well lubricated. Your tires are very critical when you're doing a track day. So these are basically brand new tires. They don't even have 100 miles on them. And they're sort of a track street rated tire. These are the Michelin Power GPs. But a lot of sport bike tires are just perfectly fine for a track day, especially if you're going to be in the novice class like me. You just want to make sure you have good tread on there and that they're within a couple years old. It's best to make sure your front and rear tires are the same tread, same age, same wear level. And while you're down here checking out your tires, you want to make sure your brakes are in good shape. Obviously look for any signs of leaking, like I had to repair one of the calipers on this bike because it was leaking. But also inspect your brake pads. Make sure they have at least 3 millimeters of pad thickness still there. That's a little more than half of their life still remaining because you go through brake pads a lot faster on the track than you would on the street. So you just want to make sure you've got enough wiggle room there for the whole day. While you're in this area, check your fork seals, make sure they're not leaking or anything like that. You don't want any of that oil to be getting on your brake pads, especially when you're at high speeds. Look for any other leaks that might be happening in the engine. You really don't want to have any leaks going on with your engine because that oil will end up on your back tire. That would be catastrophic. Check your linkages, your shift lever here. Make sure there's not excessive play. Check your rear shock. See if it's leaking anything out there. Now, talking about suspension for a moment, I've always found that it's best to put the bike kind of back to the stock settings, unless you have already had your suspension dialed in by someone that knows what they're doing. I wouldn't say I know what I'm doing necessarily, other than being able to check for sag front and rear. Everything else is just a little bit guess and check once you actually get out to the track, so I recommend just kind of put it back to the factory specifications. That way you know where you're starting at and you can start making small adjustments from there. Now moving on to the upper controls, you want to make sure your throttle snaps back like this. You want to make sure your brake levers feel tight and that there's a lot of resistance there. You don't want any sort of air in your lines. If there is, then make sure you flush all the brake fluid and bleed the brakes. In fact, it's best to just get the brake fluid changed before you hit the track because you want to have the newest brake fluid possible. You don't want to have any water in there that will heat up and cause all kinds of problems when the brake system starts to heat up. Same thing with your clutch lever. Just want to make sure it's smooth action, no dragging, no hiccups in that system at all. Lastly, on the bike, you want to make sure you top up your gas tank with fuel. Some tracks do have fuel there at the track and some do not. Either way, you'll be paying a premium if you have to fill up at the track. I am taking an additional fuel canister with me, another 5-gallon canister with me so I can top it up. In my experience, you end up running between 100, 130 miles in a single track day. So you will need extra fuel about midway through. And then for tire air pressure, I just start off with the manufacturer's recommended street pressures, at least when you're going to the track. So on this bike, it is 31 in the front and 37 in the rear. And yes, that's way too high when you actually are at the track. But if you don't have your own air compressor when you're at the track, you can always air your tires down, but you can't air them back up unless you find someone in the paddock that has an air compressor. So I recommend starting with a higher pressure, and then when you get to the track, kind of ask around others that have done a lot of track days, see what they recommend for your particular tire. And more than likely, it's going to be considerably lower than your recommended street PSI for track use. Now that we've covered kind of the general things to look out for when setting up your bike for a track day, next we'll talk about the things you want to take with you to the track day, things that are, I would call, Paddock Supplies. And the first one over here is a cooler, which you'll want to fill up with lots of water, lots of Gatorade, and some snacks and some sandwiches for lunchtime, because you're going to be out in a parking lot with the sun bearing down on you all day long, and you're going to be sweating quite a bit. So you want to fill up a cooler like this with ice and lots of water and Gatorade to stay hydrated. This is critical, especially when you need that concentration out there on the track. Next we have, again, a gas can, so you can take extra fuel with you because you will need to fill up about midday. Then over here, I recommend getting some sort of tent or finding a buddy that has a tent like this and setting it up so you can keep yourself in the shade and cool down. So this is an easy up tent. I believe they run about 120 or 150 bucks. They're great to have, not just for track days, but any sort of outdoor event you might do. Right here, I've got a tie-down strap for the front handlebars. That's really useful when you tie your bike down to a truck bed or a trailer. It gives you a nice, easy access point to strap the front end of the bike down. Since we're talking about tying the bike down to a trailer or truck bed, you want to make sure you have at least 4 ratchet straps so you can secure the bike from every corner. I've put together a toolbox with all just general tools that you might use to adjust your suspension or make small adjustments on the bike. Really, there's not much you would really do at the track other than suspension adjustments. If something breaks on the bike, your day's just done. You shouldn't try to take every tool in your toolbox just in case something happens to it. It's unlikely that your bike's going to break in any sort of way, but if it does, that's probably a sign you just need to call the day short and just enjoy watching other people ride around. So in here I've got some zip ties, some screwdrivers, some Allen key wrenches, some metric box end wrenches. I've got a caliper to measure suspension, and some towels. I've got some helmet cleaner and some bike cleaner and some rags just to generally clean up things because you're going to be hitting bugs and stuff's going to get everywhere, so you want to be able to clean your visor at the very least. I've got a tire pressure gauge. This is probably the most useful tool you will have when you go out to a track because you can quickly see what your current PSI is and air it down by just pressing this little valve right here to the desired PSI. And then you want to have some lawn chairs, at least one for yourself. If you've taken a friend with you, make sure you have a couple lawn chairs so you can sit down in between sessions and just enjoy the day. And this next part, obviously not required, but it's nice to have if you've got some paddock stands just to get the bike off the ground so you can make suspension adjustments and just take a general look, see how the bike is holding up over the course of the day. Now that we've seen all the stuff you might want to take with you to the paddock, now let's see all the things that you, the rider, needs for a track day. And you see I've laid out all of the riding gear needed. And we'll just start off here. You'll need some full-length gauntlet racing style gloves. I mean, they don't have to be racing style, but they do need to be leather and full length gauntlet style. Then you'll need an approved helmet that's preferably within 5 years old, but the key is that it is Snell rated or DOT rated, or really rated however the track day specifies. Every track day is a little bit different, but the one I'm going to requires at least a Snell 2015 rated helmet, which this showy X14 is. And then it's a good idea to get some spandex to wear beneath your suit. So this is going to be a water wicking layer, something that keeps you cool. You'll want to get a back protector. Not every track day requires something like this, but it does ensure a bit more safety, especially to your spine. You can see it's kind of this clamshell shape that allows it to flex forward, but prevents excessive backward flex. So that's a nice item to have. Then you'll need some motorcycle boots, something that goes over the ankles at the very least, but you see these are more road racing inspired boots with good ventilation. And then lastly over here is a full leather riding suit. This is a one-piece suit, but a lot of track days also permit a two-piece suit that kind of zips in the middle. The prices on these things vary widely. You can see this is an Alpine Stars one, so it's the beginning of the higher end style suits, but you can certainly get into them at a lower price point. My previous suit that I've used for other track days, I think I bought new on closeout for about $350. So you can definitely get into them for a lot less spend than something like this. But it's a good idea to grab some knee sliders if you feel like you're gonna even get close to the pavement at all. You can see these don't have any wear on them yet, so we'll see how I use them or don't use them in the upcoming track day. But this suit is tight to put on. Racing suits, if they're fitted well to your body, then they're challenging to put on, at least when they're new and you kind of break them in and you break the leather in. But as you can see, to do a track day, you do need to be fully kitted out in something equivalent to what I've got shown right here. Now let's talk about the costs of doing a track day. So obviously you've got to have the bike, so I'm not going to even include that in the price of it. I'm not going to include the cost of getting a bike up to spec, up to being a safe machine to take out onto a track. So I'm not going to talk about tires or changing the brake pads or doing fluid changes and all that. That's all stuff that you want to do anyways. You want your road bike to be just as safe to have on the track as it is on the street. So I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm going to assume your bike's already there. The Paddock stuff, a lot of people have some of this stuff laying around, not all of it's strictly required, so I'm not going to include this in this general cost to do a track day. But the definite costs you'll incur are the entry fee for the track day. So the one I'm doing is $150, and that buys you from about 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I think that's about 5 or 6 20-minute sessions out on the track. Trust me, that will be enough to completely wear you out. I know I am totally finished by the end of the day. Then you'll need to think about, how am I going to get the bike to the track? It's not usually a good idea to ride the bike to the track. I mean, you don't ever want to even think about crashing, but there's always a possibility you might crash, meaning you low side the bike or something happens out there. Maybe you have a mechanical issue and it just breaks down and there's no way you can actually ride the thing back home. So you'll want to trailer it or put it in the truck or something like that. So you'll either need to rent a truck if you don't already have one, or rent a trailer from a place like U-Haul, which is what I'm doing. I rented it for 2 days just to fully encompass the track day, and it was like $32. So that's not a big expense. But you do need to have a way to pull the trailer. So you need to think about, does my car have a trailer hitch? Does my SUV, whatever you're towing with, have a trailer hitch? Or do I have a truck that I can put the bike into the back? Loading a motorcycle into the back of the truck introduces a whole nother set of stresses and things to watch out for I won't even get into here. So I always recommend just getting a trailer from U-Haul or something specifically for a motorcycle that has a low loading height that just makes it easy for even one person to load and unload. So let's say we're about $200, $220-ish once you factor in the trailer fee. Then we've got to think about this gear, the riding gear itself. A lot of this is not necessarily street gear. Maybe your helmet is, maybe your gloves are, so you might already have those things. But a suit can easily be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on the manufacturer, the quality of the suit, the way it fits. And then the boots can be anywhere from about $120 all the way up to, $300, $400. But you can definitely get some good boots for around the $150 range. And then a back protector, probably in the $80 to $100 range. Some spandex, maybe $30. And if you did have to buy a new showy helmet, you're looking at about $500 there. And then some gloves for, anywhere from, you can get some nice full gauntlet gloves for about $150. So you can easily see we're talking about maybe $1,200 to $1,500 just in gear, depending on what level you go. Now you can always find some pre-owned gear and get it for much less than that, but I would definitely expect to be in the ballpark of $1,000. But that's a one-time expense, and you can do tons of track days on that gear that you end up buying. So what does that come out to be? You're looking at a range between $1,000 to $1,500 to do your first track day with all of the expenses involved. So it's certainly not an inexpensive venture, but the idea is that it won't be the last time you do a track day. You'll do multiples, and so that expense will be distributed amongst multiple outings to the track. So there you have it. That is the practical enthusiast regimen for prepping for a motorcycle track day. There's not too much involved in it, but it does have a little bit of an expense to get started, at least that very first time. So be sure to watch out in the next video where we're actually at the track and putting this 1198 to the test. Until then, we'll see you guys again next time.